Well, I'm really excited that all of you are here. I'm happy to see your faces and your interest in screenwriting and indie filmmaking. I'm going to introduce a little bit about our institute. It's called Red Nation Celebration Institute. We're the longest standing Native arts and cultural nonprofit in the city of LA. We founded the American Indian Heritage Month in the city of LA. And under that banner, we have our Red Nation International Film Festival. And that film festival travels all over the country. After we screen here in LA in November, then we handpick some of the best films and we travel. We're in New York, we're in Washington, D.C., and we're in Santa Fe, New Mexico, Vegas, and next year we'll be 25 years old. And we're happy to announce that, where's Aubrey? We're happy to announce that we will, we're going to be launching the first Native Studies Center here at USC. And it's going to be under Red Nation Celebration Institute. And I think what we're going to do is start off with a floor first, baby step, right? And then within the next 5 years, develop a building. Because it's going to take a lot of money to do this. But I feel very confident about it, and I don't see it as an issue at all. So our storytelling is really important to our institute. Our perception, our point of view, our Indigenous screenwriters, animation creators, actors, producers, because the reality is we are the new Hollywood. Let that sink in for just 1 second. We're absolutely the new Hollywood. And moving forward, being so underrepresented for hundreds of years, it's our time now. And so all this hard work that so many Native organizations have been able to do over the years have gotten us to this point with the inclusion of our allies. You know, like NBC, like CBS, like ABC, like Paramount, like Sony, you know, and like all the other Indigenous nonprofits that support our vision and our tribal nations. So under that banner, we have the festival. Then we have Native Women in Film and Television. And always our Native Women in Film has always been part of our film festival in November. But 10 years ago, it broke out into its own, really wanted to break out into its own festival. So that festival happens during the week of the Oscars. And this year is going to be really extraordinary. And I'll share with you that, okay, so just so you have a big picture about inclusion, okay? And it's all about, all of us are really good people and we're all trying to make this happen. So it's been 16 years since you've seen a Native woman's face on episodic television, okay? So 16 years ago, we all used to be hired. And then I don't know why it happened or if it was oversight or whatever, but we have not been on episodic television. So there's a big disconnect as far as our Native women are concerned, actors. And then, like, in 1977, we did A Girl Called Hatter Fox. It was my first starring role. It was the first contemporary Native woman story ever produced in film history. It took Hollywood 47 years. I'm gonna let that sink in. 47 years to do Chambers on Netflix. So we have a lot of work to do. So I'm really excited that NBC is our sponsor and participating in the inclusion of our voice and image. And then let's see. We also have our Native Youth Matter. If I can see it, I can be it. And that program is supporting Native youth on the reservations with all kinds of different programming. We've been doing that since the late 70s. And also, we now are very well established. This is the first year that we're in this Indigenous school downtown LA, and we opened up the festival on November 1st there, and we had 13 Indigenous youth all the way from screenwriters to actors to directors to producers. We put them in a room. I gave them a task to do. I never underestimate our youth, never ever. And they came up, the choice they chose was the immigration issue. We were all in tears. All the adults in the room were like floored by it. So we have made them our Red Nation ambassadors. So every senior year in that school, they are now officially our Red Nation ambassadors representing the next generation of filmmakers. And then we have our Red Nation Television Network, and that's rednationtv.com. We were before Netflix or Hulu or before any networks were online streaming. I was way ahead of my time, but we're now right on time. so it's a good thing. And we have 10 million viewers in 37 countries. And the 2020, we just got a huge funder who is supporting us to do our 6th facelift with the site, so it could be more friendly, user-friendly for our viewers. And we're also uploading 300 new film titles. So pay attention to that, because it's really rock and roll. I really love what's going on with the network. We're here today to introduce a lot of different programs, a lot of different points of view from the industry on how to help facilitate your interests. How many want to be a screenwriter or are screenwriters or interested in screenwriting? Okay. Is anyone in the room interested in filmmaking, being a director? Okay. Actors? Producers? Behind the camera? Okay. Well, and it's okay if you're shy, and if you don't know, that's okay too. Hopefully we'll inspire you to get involved. So I'm going to introduce our panel. I am so honored and pleased to have everyone here, because truly you are going to experience very creative, talented, extremely, what's the English word? Prolific point of view into the industry. I'd like to introduce Christine Lamont. She is a producer, and she has her own production company, and she's a former Disney, Universal, Orion marketing executive. And she is, she's been writing her first, I don't know if it's your first screenplay?
It is.
Yeah, first screenplay with one of our native filmmakers, Yvonne, who also produced a film that won last year at our film festival, Woman Walks Ahead. Have you guys seen that film, Woman Walks Ahead? You have to see it.
And also Minnie's Bonnet.
Yes.
Minnie's For Bonnet.
And Minnie's For Bonnet in our animation series that we're screening. So this is Christine. And then I'd like to introduce James. James is an Emmy-nominated producer, actor, and the most recent film that he produced is Love, Gilda. If anyone has seen that documentary, it's about Gilda Radner's life story. It's brilliant. It's so gorgeous. It's her, yeah. What can you say? It's gorgeous. Yeah. Yeah. We'll talk about that. And then I'd like to introduce you to Grace. And Grace is the Director of Talent Development and Inclusion at NBC Entertainment. And she's going to talk about all the wonderful things that she does, the magic she does at NBC. And then William is one of our native screenwriters in Los Angeles, and he's written for shows for Lionsgate and ABC, and is an NBC Writers alumni and ABC Disney Television and LA Skins Fest. So that's it. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Grace to introduce the NBC.
Hi guys, thanks Joanelle. Thank you all for being here. I want to use my time to quickly walk through a lot of the programs that we have at the network. Talent Development and Inclusion at NBC Entertainment is basically making sure that we have women, people of color, veterans, LGBTQ filmmakers and content creators working on our shows, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. And I specifically oversee all of our efforts for writers and directors. So these are the pillars of the network. Intentionally Inclusive is our newest pillar that was just created last year, and which is really everything that we do in the department. For the directors out there, just so you know, we actually have 3 paid shadowing directors programs. So essentially, if you are interested in breaking into episodic television, the best way to do that, one of the best ways to do that, is to shadow on a show. And so we have these 3 programs: the Emerging Directing Program, which is for diverse males, Female Forward for female directors, and the Alternative Director Program, which is for men and women. And these are really great programs. I should say EDP and Female Forward are for the scripted side, and Alternative ADP is for the unscripted side. So if you're interested in directing shows like The Voice, World of Dance, America's Got Talent, that would be the program for you, and the other 2 are for the scripted side. These 2 programs, again, are paid shadowing programs. Many of the programs out there don't give you a stipend while you're out shadowing for 6 or 12 weeks. We do. We also handle all of your travel, your hotel while you're there, if you are a non-local. And then as of last year, we have a guarantee of an episode in the same season. And we're the only network in the industry that gives a guarantee. Oftentimes the programs will help you shadow, which is very valuable as well. But of course, we actually give you an episode in that same season. So super successful. The submission window just closed for EDP, Female Forward, and ADP. So something to think about for next year for the directors out there. We also have a Stand Up NBC initiative for those of you, I know these are primarily behind the camera folks, but we do a nationwide search to find diverse talent. Past winners include W. Kamau Bell, Hannibal Buress, Dion Cole, really great talent. So, and we have our showcase next week. So that's that. I'm gonna just skip over that. So writers on the Verge, can you raise hands again? How many of you all are writers or want to write for television at some point? Awesome. Have you all heard of Writers on the Verge or submitted before? No? Okay, so this is a really great program. Will here is an alum and did the program a couple years ago, but it's for writers who already know how to write scripts. You already have, a couple scripts in your own portfolio, but you just need to bridge that gap from bringing your talent and getting access to the network. So the submission window for that is every May. We got 2,300 submissions this past year, and we chose 8 writers, which is typically how many we choose to be in the class. But the first half of the program, from October through January, we work on a brand new pilot sample. And then the back half of the program, January through March, is all the professional development, from personal branding, network and studio panels, to like mentorship and speed networking. So we really do a holistic approach when it comes to training the writers and readying them for staffing season. And so that's a great program. And William can talk about that later on. And also, just as an FYI, as far as NBC putting its money where its mouth is, we also have a diverse staff writer initiative where our department will pay for a diverse staff writer on all of our shows and support them for up to 3 seasons. Many networks only support them for 1 season, and the issue with that is that it often will become sort of like one and done. They'll have one person in, let them go, bring in a new person. But for us supporting them for 3 seasons, they really get to grow as a writer, build a rapport with the showrunners in the room. So by the time the 3rd season wraps up, they're probably at the ESE level, and then they'll be happy to take on that salary, and then we could bring in a new person. So that's the DSW initiative. Some beneficiaries of this initiative include Alan Yang, Mindy Kaling, Donald Glover. So as you can see, it's definitely a successful initiative that we have within the company. We have casting initiatives as well. And then how many of you all are comedy writers? No? None? Okay. So I'll skip this so I don't eat into anybody's time, but we also have a late night writers workshop where we will work with writers over the course of a week in New York and really get them prepared to staff on either a late night show or a sketch show, alternative. Many of the writers also get staffed on our scripted shows like AP Bio and Dateable. So it's a really good feeder into all of our content, not just unscripted. So that's a program. It takes place every spring at 30 Rock. So you just have to get yourself there for a week, and then we will work with you and try to get you staffed on our shows or as opportunities come up. As an FYI, for those of you that are below the line, we recently announced a new initiative to get more people of color staffed or hired below the line. So now we ask that all of our shows on the network have at least one diverse PA, which thankfully many of them already do, but we have a database so that if they don't, we can help sort of resource that talent for them. And then we also have a production office coordinator program, which is also a paid shadowing program. Currently we have POCs on Good Girls and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and they are basically shadowing the production office coordinator for the duration of production, which is about 6 months. They're getting a stipend, all that stuff. And so the hope is that, and I will say that the caliber of talent here, these are folks who have been like key PAs, assistant POCs, and we're just trying to give them a little bit more education and insight into being the next level up. And so the hope is that if a series gets picked up for the following season, that they can have an in for that role in the next season. And then these are just some of the other external organizations that we work with. We are really excited to work with Red Nation and really work and try to find the best Native talent. I was just at Imagine Native last week. We have a relationship with LA Skins Fest. So we are really here to find the best talent and really groom them to find opportunities at NBC. And then this is just our social. If you ever want to get updates on submission windows or anything like that, you can just follow us on social. And that's all I have. Cool, thank you. I didn't want to give up too much time.
So now we're going to have Christine share.
Yeah, this is a perfect segue actually, because it's so important. Internships, these types of programs, these types of workshops are really essential when you're breaking in for emerging filmmakers. And I think that any way that you can network at any kind of program like this or any kind of event that's industry related, I think you should take advantage of it. I think you should have cards made up. Number one, I taught at the School of Visual Arts, and the first thing that all my students had to do was bring their card in, shake my hand, and hand it to me with clean nails and polished shoes or clean shoes. Whether they were sneakers or not, it was important to me at the time. So I think these things are important. The way you look and the way you present yourself is the way people feel you're going to work. So I think those things are really important. And the other thing is that always say yes and always show up. If you're working somewhere and someone says, because I have gone into, there was a really wonderful sales clerk at this little boutique that I used to shop at in Cambridge. And I thought she was fabulous. She spent time, she knew what to do, she really took care of me. And I said, how would you like to have a career in film? And she said, okay, I think that's a great idea. And I actually brought her in. She was an intern. We gave her, it was a paying internship, so she could make the segue from one career into another. And she ended up being the director of this great studio that I was working for. So what I'm saying to you is you can always say yes, and if you don't know what to do, you can always find out. I've taken a few jobs where I said, I don't really know about this, but I made phone calls, I found out, and it's really the hero's way. There's a great book called The Path of the Everyday Hero, where you have to gather information. You have a goal over here, you gather information, it's a little bit of a loop down, but then you climb up, get the information, you're on your way. And I feel some way that's the kind of the same way of finding a job and finding a career that you like. I mean, being in the film industry is not an easy thing. You have to want it, you have to be persistent, you have to keep trying, knocking on doors and saying yes. You have to, if you need to, volunteer. I remember once that I was too qualified for one job that I was applying for, and I said, that's okay, I'll volunteer. And I actually, a few weeks later, ended up being the director, only because part of my ability is to see a larger picture and to act, because I grew up with 4 brothers, and not be afraid, because they were always the ones that I used to have to, show that I was able to do things. In any case, always say yes, and if you don't know the answers, find them out. So those are important things that I think. And also relationships and networking is essential. And usually the people that you work with in one capacity in the film industry, people like to have shorthands, and they like to be able to work with the same group over and over. So those relationships are essential and important. And also the other thing is to be a multi-hyphenate. So I saw some of you wanted to be more than one thing. And I really encourage that, because today it doesn't always work to be one, whether it's an actor or director, producer. It really helps. James is a perfect case in point as an actor, director, a writer, and producer, and Emmy nominated, among other things. So it's really important to be able to set your sights a little higher than you normally would. Those are some of the things that I can offer you today.
Well, I also wanted to ask you a question, because you're writing this first screenplay.
Right.
So what has been the process for you at this stage with your team?
Well, Yvonne Russo, Joanelle mentioned, is a Native American, and although I'm not a Native American, I'm a citizen of the world, and I identify with all races and all creeds and all religions. So I feel very comfortable in any milieu. And after dancing with Dances with Wolves, I did the marketing on that, and was made an honorary Lakota, I think. Was it? Yeah. So anyway, so Yvonne and I have been on this film for 6 years. Documentaries take a long time. So funding is part of it, and it took place in Italy. It's called Viva Verdi, and it's about the home that Verdi built for retired opera singers, these wonderful, celebrated opera singers that live there, and the 17 young music students who live with them that they mentor. So it's a very exciting place to be. So we started this 6 years ago. Yvonne, at one point when she was producing for Showtime, it was I think it was a show called The Hidden Treasures of Milan. That was one of them. And she loved it and said, we've got to go make this movie there. So we went and started this process. So she and I have had this really great symbiotic relationship, and we've been writing back and forth for 6 years now. So when whether it's the bios or, and I have a marketing background, so it's easy for me to create a skeletal or to start the process, and then we'll go back and forth, and it's really been a wonderful process, and I'm looking forward to when we get our film is in post-production right now. We're raising funds for the rest of post. I'm really looking forward to continuing this process. With a documentary, you never know which way it's going to go, or where they have a narrator. So it's exciting to even think about the different options that we have for this.
Well, I want to share, because that's really. So I directed this documentary, right? And in the 90s, it was supposed to be a 90-minute feature. That was the vision, and it was the first American Indian Holocaust film, and it's called American Holocaust. When it's all over, I'll still be Indian, right? And I wrote it, directed it, produced it, the whole thing. And but I had this 90-minute, and I went to because I was raised in the industry, so I went to everyone I knew. You've got to, give me money to do this documentary, and they're like, Joanelle, it's the Holocaust. How are you going to get the Holocaust in 90 minutes? And I said, well, just trust me. But the only successful documentary at that time in the mid 90s was Muhammad Ali's feature doc, right? So documentaries really weren't like the thing. Now they're really, it's grown since then. So no one would give me the money, and so when PBS or ITVS or whoever would hire me as a producer or director, I would have good cameras and lighting, because I'm a guerrilla filmmaker. So I would go and document all these elders and get all this footage, and I just kept, logging it in, and then one day, it was like in 1999, I was at the beach taking my, day before school starts, and I have this vision to get all the interviews, make it a doc short, and enter it into the Oscars, enter it to the Academy. Well, I forget the film festivals, like I go to the top. So I did that, and asked everyone to pitch in. Everyone pitched in, everyone donated the editing time, because I didn't have money, and we entered a 30-minute, 28-minute short, and 22 films were entered that year. 9 were chosen, so our film was shortlisted for an Oscar, and then 5 were nominated. And now I know, next time I make a film, what to do. It's like to get nominated, to get into that level, what you have to do. Okay, so now I know.
I know all those things.
Yeah, and your buddy told me about it, and he was like, so okay. The other day at lunch, I was like, okay, this is. But anyway, I'm sharing that with you because there are no rules, right? To filmmaking, there are no mistakes. There are no mistakes in screenwriting. There's no mistakes here. So the bottom line is just showing up. That's the magic. That's the whole magic. That's the golden ticket. Is just to show up.
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, there are no dumb questions.
People expect you to ask questions, and don't be afraid. You really have to be fearless.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to fail.
And starting this, enterprise, right? This institute, 24 years ago, everyone said, you can't do that. You're like, what? Who do you think you are?
Amazing.
And it's like, we launched the first network, online streaming network. We launched the first film festival in this entertainment capital of the universe. There was no native film festival. What is up with that? So I just changed it. I didn't ask permission. I didn't go, can I do this? No.
You have big dreams and.
Yeah. And here we are, right?
Shout out. That's awesome.
It is, really fabulous.
And it takes a lot of help, a lot of friends, a lot of partnerships, and a lot of no's, because all those no's adds up to one gigantic yes. That's the bottom line.
Does.
Yeah. So let's move on to James, because I was invited to see his film at the Academy, and it's really an extraordinary film, and I had no idea the depth of her story and who all I know is from watching her as a little girl, on Saturday Night Live, is that, she was this phenomenal comedian, right?
Yeah. Everybody familiar with Gilda Radner? She was in the first cast of Saturday Night Live. So I was a big fan of hers many years ago. And on the day she died, my response, back then we didn't have the 24/7 news cycles. On the day she died, my response to the universe, to her death, was, I'm going to get her star on the Walk of Fame. Fast forward, I moved to Hollywood, I became a producer, and I did a special for ABC. In 2002, they were doing a block of Gilda Radner, a 2-hour television movie based on her book, It's Always Something, and then they asked me and my producing partner to do a special on Gilda, and that was up my alley because I knew all of the clips and I knew all of her films, even though her film career was very short because it was cut short because she died. She passed away from ovarian cancer. But because of that, I was able to realize the dream of getting her the star on the Walk of Fame a year later, and I started to realize that it really is all about connections. And back in the day, it seemed like it was one club, but I had a feeling it was going to change. I didn't know why, but it was that inner voice. So as that sort of happened very slowly, I stayed friends with her brother. and he was very supportive of my career over the years. And about 5 years ago, he asked me if I would give advice to a female filmmaker who wanted to do a documentary on his sister. And I said, of course, I would do anything for the Radner family. And when I met with Lisa, who was the director, I had a sense that maybe I wouldn't be a great fit for her model, because I think she really wanted to promote working with female filmmakers, which was fine. I understood that, respected that. And then 2 or 3 years later into the process, she called me up and she said, hey, would you kind of help out and come on board? And I think and by that time in my career, I'd cast some indie movies, and I'd been a consultant for different companies. So I kind of collected this great Rolodex of managers and agents, and I was able to assemble a cast. But the interesting thing was, this is the first time I was working with all females. And while it felt different, I didn't want it to be different, because to me it was irrelevant. What our gender was, we were working on with passion. Your origins of your questions, I may have strayed a little, but anyway, yes, we had a female editor, female composer, female producers, and then me. And it felt a little odd at times, because there was that Me Too had just kicked off. This was 2017. So, but regardless, it wasn't a bumpy ride. It was we were all doing it for Gilda, and our passion was directed in the right way. It wasn't a reaction to anything negative, despite whatever obstacles we had with the business or booking people or money, that sort of thing.
So James, do you have? Well, James is also, he had another film that won at our film festival. In what was it, 2016?
2015.
15.
Strike One.
Strike One, and that was a really powerful film. But can you just share? I don't even know what this question what a producer, like, what does producing mean? What is that? Like, we know, like, directing, right? Okay, there it is, that's real. But like, producing is so it's a whole big,
well, when I started,
fabulous thing, right?
Yes. Well, when I started, anyone can be a producer,
Yeah.
And that was not a good thing. And I'm also a member of the Producers Guild, and there's been this big movement to make sure that the producer title is protected, and whoever gets a producer credit is a bona fide producer. They did the work, and then when that does slip through, like an indie film, it can slip through. But if you want to advance as a producer during award seasons or anything like that, then you will be vetted. Those producers will be vetted, and if you've done less than 50% of the work, they don't consider you a producer, even though on screen it appears. The kind of producer I started out to be was a line producer dealing with money, and I'm horrible at math. But that's just how life works sometimes,
I know.
We think you're good with math, even though you so. And then I moved into creative producer, and it's still called a producer. So that's the kind of producer I am. There are executive producers in TV. They're usually more the deal makers, but in film, they're the money finders in the United States. And then overseas, it's different. They think executive producer overseas can typically be the god or goddess of the project. Where here, it's not necessarily the case. Money for film, TV, you have more power as an executive producer. But yes, there's supervising producers and consulting to producers. And if you watch a show, and maybe you can speak to this, quite often, they'll have writers on the staff, but they don't write every episode, but they're given a producer credit. So if you see supervising producer, that tends to mean that they're on the writing staff. They're part of the creative direction of the show. But there's also casting producers who have associate producers, yes. A lot of what I do is casting, and I'll take a producer credit. You won't necessarily get a casting producer credit, no such thing, but I'm sure someone could be called that. But it really plays to your strength if you're that kind of a producer.
Well, I've cast a lot of films, but didn't get that. No. Go back and have them redo. Anyway, well, yeah. Who's interested in being producer? Anyone? Yay. Yay. William.
Hello.
What can you share your experience on being in, because you've had a diverse kind of experience with being on different workshops, and I don't like to use the word graduating, but evolved, from, or gone on to the next level.
Yeah, the fellowship programs were incredibly helpful for me because I didn't go to college. I was self-taught, sort of writing in isolation at my graveyard shift valet job for years and years. And getting into programs like the NBC program was my first exposure to how the industry actually works. And that was hugely useful, but it also allowed me to build a network and make friends that I could support and that could support me. This weekend I'm going to a play that Tavy was in from the program, and I'm seeing the short film that is the directorial debut of Felicia Pride, and it's these people that I've come up with. I'm still in the early stages of my career, but I've seen young creative aspirants make the mistake of only trying to network up instead of networking laterally, and I have gotten more help from people at my level than from people above. It's the old axiom of a rising tide lifting all ships. That is extraordinarily true. The people that you're meeting now are the people that you're going to be working with for your whole career, and it's very interesting to come in cold and then pick up these pieces along the way. But I will be, as of next Tuesday, I will have been a staff writer for a year. I've been on 2 shows, and it's only possible because of the community around me, the people that I met in fellowship programs, and also the community of Indigenous writers in Los Angeles. If you are good and kind and help people, they will help you, has been my experience.
So in these workshops, though, what's that experience like? Being in the inside of those workshops.
Yeah, each program is a little different. The NBC is a 10-week intensive.
Yes, which has been extended to now over the course of 5 or 6 months.
Okay.
Oh my God.
And it's you're meeting executives, and you're learning how to take meetings and not be terrified. That's very useful. You're learning how to take and give notes, which a lot of people haven't been in an environment where they do that. You are working on generating new material. There will be an instructor who is giving you feedback on the scripts as they develop. And you're learning how to write on a television timeline. When you're working on a TV show, you have about a week to go from outline to full script. And if you have not ever written on that sort of timeline before, it can be rather shocking. And so the fellowship programs are a great way to learn how to write quickly and learn how to write efficiently. And it's very useful. It's a way to learn in a controlled environment, can I actually handle this workload? And so it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm glad that I asked that, because what I've been doing with our youth, right, like this last Friday, was I grouped them together, right? None of us have ever met each other, right? And it was 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And I said, who wants to be a director, like I did here, right? Put all of those guys here. Producer, actors, writers, crew, whatever. And because I only had 13 to work with, last year I had 40. And I only have an hour and a half with them, right? So what are we gonna do in an hour and a half? So I gave them an assignment. They had to write, direct, do all of it in 20 minutes on Friday. 20 minutes. Because I know as a guerrilla filmmaker, sometimes that's what it takes. You have to think on your feet. You don't have time to have the luxury of, I can sit here and, wait and, raise the money, whatever. No, it's you have to think on your feet, right? The timeline that you have a week, right? So I have to get them thinking. There's no time to worry about that they're shy or they can't do it or this is impossible. None of those self-doubts. So they did it, and we have a film of it, which I'll post on our website, but it was just amazing. It was amazing. Yeah, so I appreciate that you sharing that, because that makes me know that I'm on the right track with these kids. Yeah. So we're going to open it up for questions and answers and sharing, and is anyone interested in asking?
So I had a question.
Yeah.
In one way or another, each of you mentioned something around this idea of either having to hear the no's or being responsible for telling people no. And so can you just talk about how you kind of stay focused when you're getting bad news or have to give bad news? Because you got 8 slots and 2,200 people trying to get them. That's a lot of bad news. And so how do you just kind of handle that messaging?
Well, I know for me, when I get a no, that's my revolution. It's not a negative to me. It's never been a negative to me, a no. It gives me more energy, actually. I mean, but there has been times when it's been an unexpected shock, no? Like this is like kind of a given, and it's been like Christina experienced my ugly cry the other day, when it's an unexpected shock, and it's like, oh, and sometimes that'll take me down for just, you know, a good night. Maybe I allow myself 24 hours to process all of that energy, of all that expectation, all of that. Oh, I didn't know that it worked that way. Oh, what a drag. You know, all that stuff that we go through as human beings, the human condition, right? And then I get back up and went, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go about it this way. And screw them. No, I'm just their loss.
I agree with you. I just think it's an opportunity to be more creative.
Yeah.
Find the other way around. Find someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
Another door.
It also, too, is I really believe in a higher power. So I know that intuitively, I know that wasn't the best for me. There's something much, much bigger and so much better for the vision that I have. And I don't sweat it, really. But to give the no's.
Yeah, I would say, you know, for something like Writers on the Verge, where like 2,300 people are sort of rejected from the program, I think for us, we still try to be as encouraging as possible, because the last thing we want to do is have somebody be vulnerable and submit these essay questions and their writing samples and then feel like, you know, just to feel dejected and rejected. So for us, we always, when possible, if a writer comes back and is like, hey, I applied, I didn't get in, do you have notes? I will never say no to that, even though we're not supposed to give notes. So that's something I try to do as far as helping them grow from this experience. And you know, the directing program window just closed, but I had, I don't know, 30 directors reach out like, hey, can I take you to coffee? And can you give me feedback on my application? Can you watch my reel? And so while it is exhausting, I think, to maintain all those relationships and keep them encouraged, that's something that I do. And I think also as far as on the network side and corporately, you know, we've had some limited resources over the past year and had to cut some programs. And I think it really is us trying to be creative and find new ways to identify talent or new ways to get involved in the Native American Indigenous community. And it really is an exercise in being creative and finding other ways to get the same result. Todd Holland, who leads the diversity efforts at the DGA, he applies this to directors, but I think it also applies to those in the industry in general, which is basically, if you can get out, get out. And if you can't, then you might have what it takes to make it in this industry. So I think that's the type of people we're looking for, whether it's writers, directors, actors, the folks who are, whether they get a no for Writers on the Verge or they didn't get a part for one of our, shows, like they're just going to keep hustling and trying for it because this is their calling in life, this is their passion, and they, just have to write, even if they didn't get into Writers on the Verge. So that I think is a really good indicator of the talent that can survive.
It took me 3 or 4 tries to get into Writers on the Verge, but even when I got a no, that doesn't undo the things that I learned working on the scripts that I wrote that year. It's an opportunity to write more and learn more every time. So.
Another example too is when the networks weren't hiring Native actresses, for that 16-year period. What we did when the Time's Up and the Me Too thing happened in 2018, January 7th, at the Golden Globes, when all of our actors and actresses were wearing black and saying Me Too, I immediately got our board together, calling everyone, I said, we have to do hashtag Why We Wear Red, and for our Indigenous missing and murdered women, because there's a direct link. If this is not seen contemporary, not in a teepee in the 1800s. That's why I stopped acting, because I was always getting roles in the 1800s. If we're not seen contemporary, right, and there's the missing and murdered Indigenous women, there is a direct link. Because if we're not seen and heard, we're going to get to you. If we're not seen and heard, then they could do whatever they want to us, and they're not going to be held accountable because nobody cares. We're not on the news, we're not on episodic television, So we did, we hashtag Why We Wear Red. We went into a call to action. USC got involved. Congresswoman Deb Haaland got involved. 5 top on-the-ground Native women organizations got involved. Joanne Shenandoah got involved. These are really names in our community, top names in our community. And we were able to go into some of not NBC, I wish it would have been, but some of the other networks and say, look, where are we, right? And we would like to take a little bit of the credit, because now on ABC, and that was one of the networks that we were really targeting, is now they have Stomptown. And we have, one of our actresses, Tantun Cardinal, on a series regular. That's a big thing, right? But I'd like to think that all the behind the camera efforts that we had to do to go in there and look in everyone's face and say, hey, look, where are we? Where's this? We have, we're life givers. Our kids are committing suicide because they don't see themselves. They're responsible, because if they're not hiring us, right, then someone needs to be held accountable. And so that's why I really appreciate this partnership and helping us be able to move forward so that our kids can see themselves and and relate to. And also the non-Native communities, and get to learn about us, get to see us. And one of the ways that this is happening even more than any other part of the industry is our animation department. We have a big animation day Wednesday at 7 in Hollywood at the Television Studio City, 7 to 8:30. So if you want to come sign up, and you're welcome, it's a free, and we have all these top animators.
Those are the top-end animators.
Yes, thanks to Christine.
Really, they're
Christine's
incredible.
on our board, so.
I love animators. I think they're imaginative and incredible.
These are the animators from Frozen, and so it's Indigenous storytelling through animation, right? And oh my God, these shorts that were entered into the film festival this year, oh my God, they're so gorgeous and so talented, and I just want everyone to see them. So everyone, come, you're all invited.
So my question is, how do screenwriters or producers steer away from stereotyping people in shows or film? Just as you were getting stereotyped and only being casted as a Native American in a TV in the 1800s, how do you prevent that, or the way an actor who's black, when they appear in a show, there's a hip hop beat in the background, or if there's a person playing a Hispanic, they have a very thick stereotypical Hispanic accent. How do screenwriters or producers steer away from that? Because it's one thing to, I think, for people not to be able to see themselves on TV, and it's another for people to see themselves in a particular way on TV.
If I may
Yeah,
jump in.
oh, yeah.
I think it's all about the writer's room. You
Yes.
know, I think to get those stories out there, they're conceived in that room, and you know, William can speak about this further, but that's always our goal. I mean, ideally also to have diverse showrunners, but at the very least get those folks in the writer's room, because if there is, say, a Native character, it would be great to have a Native writer to also sort of inform and educate, to make sure that that character isn't just one-dimensional, that they're multidimensional, but also they have, you know, they capture all the nuances. You know, I think that's something that we always try to do, which is why we have try to get at least one diverse staff writer on all of our shows. I mean, you work on Stumptown.
To that point, yeah, I'm on Stumptown right now, and one of the
Are you as a writer?
yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Yes, very
so
excited.
then you need to write me in. you need to write me in as Jim's sister, or her auntie, or her aide,
Always room for an auntie.
or her cousin, or serving her coffee at the casino.
What I will say, in my experience, something that's very heartening is that everybody wants to do it right. They just don't always know how to do it right. And so the main thing is to recognize that if somebody slips up and like goes to the easy option of a stereotype that they've seen on TV before, to correct them, to speak up, not be afraid to speak up, but to do it in a kind way and recognize that nobody sets out to be racist. It's very much, it is oftentimes just replicating things that they've already seen before, and it's a gentle correction, and it's going down to the art department and saying, I know we're going onto a reservation in this episode, can we please make sure there are no dream catchers in anybody's house? Like, it's that sort of, it's saying please, and it's gently correcting people. Thank you, yes. and people, in my experience, are so happy to be corrected, because they're like, oh, thank goodness, I didn't mess that up. Like, I almost did a racism, and you stopped me at the last minute, and people appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm a composer. I'm not a literary writer, and I've got a documentary script and a narrative script, but one particular idea that's in a story form, since I don't consider myself a literary writer, how does one go about finding a writing partner?
I would recommend, because there are a couple, they're not part of a university system, but there are organizations and labs like Script Anatomy, the Writing Pad, where many writers can converge. They'll take workshops, but it's also a networking opportunity. Yeah. And then I think oftentimes that's where you will find somebody that sort of was like-minded creatively, or if there's like a writers group. I know, I'll say for Writers on the Verge, we work with Jen Grisanti, and she has an event every month where writers of all levels can just come and network with each other, and then oftentimes they'll sort of just get connected and maybe, you know, form a partnership. And on a totally separate note, I will say that the Universal Pictures Group, which is the feature side, they do have a composers program if you are interested in sort of getting into that on the feature side.
Yeah, there's also, Jeff Gordon has Writers Boot Camp.
Oh, yes.
I think it's at the Bergamot Station. I think it's still there. But you could look that up.
Yeah.
And that's fabulous.
Yeah.
You go in with an idea,
Definitely.
you come out with a script.
Yeah.
He promises you that.
That's a good.
That's something definitely to look into.
Yeah.
And for Love Gilda, Lisa, before I started, before I met Lisa, I know she was working the concept of the film through various organizations like Hot Docs and IFP. And then when I came on board and there was a little more traction, then we started hitting them harder. We had a sizzle reel, we had a cast. So and attending IFP, it's in New York. I don't think they have one here, but I'm not sure about that. And Hot Docs is out of LA as well. It's not in LA.
IDA has classes every day. It's $80 to join, and there are screenings every day, and there are classes every day. It's a fabulous organization and a great way to get your feet wet, whether it's documentaries that you want to make or features. You network, you learn, and you create your universe that way.
Yeah, that's the key. Just to associate yourself, join these organizations like IDA, and there's one other, the independent doc producers.
Oh yeah, independent feature.
And everybody shows
feature.
up. Composers,
Yeah.
writers, producers, directors, camera people,
Yeah.
and they network and look for their next gig.
Oh, I was just wondering, first of all, thank you guys for being here. It's really interesting to hear your stories and everything you guys said. I was just wondering, for effective diversity and inclusion, both behind the camera and in front of the camera, what does that look like to be done in a sort of like well-fashioned way of 10, 20, 30 years down the line? Like, what does that look like to you in your various positions in the industry?
I could give an example. In the 90s, I was pitching a lot to the networks and studios, and I was really enthusiastic, and I had scripts with 13 episodes to back up the series, and it was all cast, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready. Shot a pilot of all native television series to show what it looks like. I painted the pictures so they could never say no. And the studios, this one studio, I'll never forget him because he was really honest with me. And this was 1994, and he said, you're way ahead of your time. This is not going to happen for another 25 years. Mm-hmm. So just chill, keep being creative, and here we are, right?
That happens.
Here we are.
It really happens.
So that's just one experience, but and then now we have Stomptown. Am I saying that right?
Stumptown.
Stump. I know. I always say stomp. Stumptown. Yeah, it's. I just say to just keep doing it and just keep doing it and showing up and doing it and showing up and doing it and showing up and doing it. I was listening to Brian Allen share about his experience in the industry. You know Brian Allen? He's a comedian. He owns the Weather Channel. He owns a lot of things. But how he started his production company is he called every day for a year a whole list of people every single day. And he kept getting no's and no's and no's. And that's what I did with Red Nation too. It's like no's and no's and no's, and then
You have to be best friends with that word, relentless.
yes.
That is really the truth.
Yeah.
Relentless.
You have to believe in
You have to
yourself.
believe in yourself.
Because
That's
no one
right.
else will.
As for what I would like it to look like on the TV side in particular, which I can speak to maybe better than film, is that I would like to see more upper level Indigenous writers and more upper level diverse writers in general. It can be harder for diverse writers to break past mid-level. We have very, very few upper level diverse people in general. We don't have any showrunner or EP level Indigenous writers. Lucas Brown Eyes and Sierra Ornelas are working on it. They're pretty close, but it's that's what I'd like to see.
And for me, I think a great example, which is few and far between, is we brought in some guest speakers to speak to all of our showrunners, which is now part of an annual meeting that we do. And one of the panelists is a leader in the Sikh community, SIKH. And she was just sort of sharing her own personal story. And she was able to go to the This Is Us writer's room and talk about the Sikh experience. And then that same season, we were able to get a Sikh character that wasn't, a terrorist or they didn't have like an accent. And they were also they were wearing the headdress, the turban. And he was just giving Randall, the dad, advice on fatherhood. So for me, in a perfect world, when we get to this place of inclusion and authenticity of sharing various story points, that's what it looks like, is to get those stories on the air where it's not like one every, one series.
47 years.
Yeah, exactly. One every 47 years, where that's just, all the shows will have that.
And the change I've seen, right, because I'm really old, the change I've seen these last 3 years has been extraordinary, because there's been actual real effort, like the networks showing up the networks taking on real meetings. We're getting calls like crazy. You know, I just got offered a huge position that I've accepted, and just, you know, I'm waiting to see, and it'll be a first. So I have seen a change. Of course, I wish it was like a lot more, but I'm grateful that that we're here now.
One of the hats I wear is an actor, and I've been doing it for about 20 years. And back in the day, when I'd look at Breakdown or Actors Access, it skewed very white. Yeah. Now, in the past 3 years, it is completely different. Yeah.
I could also, with the Academy, as an Academy member too, I've been an Academy member for 35 years, and in the last 3 years exactly, the diversity is unbelievable. It's so beautiful. James has gone to a lot of screenings with me, and Joanelle, you know, as an Academy member as well, that now you walk in and they're not just tall white guys. Yeah. It's the truth, because there used to be. And now there's this beautiful, beautiful, you know, diverse fabric of humanity there, whether it's you know, one of the screenings or an event, and it just gives you hope. Yeah. It's everything has opened up. There's a window, and you have to see that all are welcome, and everyone's got a story. And if you feel strongly about your story but have a little problem writing it, get a partner to write with you. Yeah. You know, but everyone has a voice. Everyone wants to be heard. You can do it.
Yeah. How to protect the story?
Protect the story? Well, I can share my experience. You can, you know, register it with the Writers Guild. You can mail it to yourself. You can, when you submit it, you can have a letter of confident, you know, what do you call it? Yeah, that. And all of those are good, and I recommend doing all of those, but at the end of the day, if they want to take it, they take it. So
James does a lot of contractual work. What do you recommend for?
Well, it's really tough. I mean, just make sure you have a great lawyer.
And that too.
Unfortunately, that's, you know, to protect your idea, and even to say, like, well, there's no way anybody could duplicate this or make it. You can change the gender, change the age, and change the city, and it's it's really tough. To trust the people you're working with, and getting legal document signs like the NDA, those are important.
I want to thank everyone for showing up and being a part of Red Nation team and supporting Red Nation. And I want to thank our board members for being here. That always makes a big difference. And I want to thank you for showing up for yourselves. That's like really amazing. And
thank you, Joanelle.
You're welcome. You're welcome.